Good morning, Morai Rabotai. We are continuing on Masechet Avodah Zarah, and we are on Daf Chaf Amud Aleph, 12 lines down from the top of the Amud. Today's Amud is being learned. Lizchut Yoshua ben Diana, Yael bat Rivka, Menashe ben Asi. Today's Amud is also being learned. Ilui Nishmat Tzipora bat Yitzchak. We are in the middle of discussing the Agadic Perush of the Pasuk. Today's Amud is also being learned Le'ilui Nishmat Menashe ben Yaakov. Shema should have a Liyah. Amen. Thank you. So we are in the middle of discussing the psukim of Lo Techonem, that the pasuk says Velo Techonem at the end. This is a pasuk in Dvarim discussing the conquest in Tanah Hashem Elokecha lefanecha v'ikita v'kitam hacharem tacharim otam lo tichrot lahem berit velo techonem. Now the Gemara explained based on the grammar of this pasuk that lo techonem means three different things. Lo titen lahem chaniya bekarka, you cannot give them a foothold in land. Lo techonem also means don't give them matanat chinam, and it also means don't give them chen. Don't praise the Avodah Zarah. So says the Gemara, this that we said matanat chinam umatnat chinam gufa tanaehi. The fact that you can't give a free gift to an idol worshipping individual is machloket tanaim. The Tanya lo tochlu kol nevela lager asher bish'arecha titenena v'achala. O machor lenochri. Now this pasuk is a very interesting pasuk. When the pasuk describes the prohibition against eating nevela, and we mentioned nevela means an animal that has been killed in a non-shchita manner, or a messed up shchita, right? If your knife is not a kosher knife for shchita, or if you shoot a bullet into the animal, like the way they shech in many of the slaughterhouses, they have this special gun-like thing that it shoots instead of pellets or bullets, it shoots a metal rod out and then it goes back in, and that's how they paralyze the animal. And then they, as the animal is still alive but paralyzed, they can't move, so it looks pretty humane, but it really feels every single bit of pain, and they cut it alive, cut it up. That's how it's done in many of the slaughterhouses, and so on. So that's considered nevela, and a nevela you cannot eat. But the Torah says, what do you do with this nevela? And let's try to translate the pasuk literally, because that would explain the grounds of the machloket tanaim that we find in the Gemara right here, how to understand the mitzvah. Says the pasuk, Lager asher bish'arecha titenena v'achala, give it to the ger that's in your sha'arim, in your gates. What is this talking about? Can't be a ger tzedek, because a ger tzedek cannot eat nevela either. So what does it mean? It's talking about a ger toshav, or ger ha'ochel nevelot utrefot. What is a ger toshav? A goy, a non-Jew that has accepted not to do Avodah Zarah, but still eating terefot, right? But he has accepted upon himself to keep some of the basic laws, of course, the laws prohibiting against the Avodah Zarah area of mitzvot, and that is considered a ger toshav. So you should give it to a ger toshav, titenena, like a matana, language of matana. You give it to a ger toshav, which resides with you in your gates, in your country, or the second option is machor lenochri. You sell it to a stranger, sell it to an oved avodah zarah, for instance. Ki am kadosh ata LaHashem Elokecha, lo tebashel gedi b'achalev imo. Right, so that's the language of pasuk. Two options: you either give it to a ger toshav or you sell it to a nochri. So says the Gemara, What does that exactly mean? Why do you have to say it like that? Just say, do whatever you want to do with it. Why do you have to tell me, give it to a ger toshav or sell it to a nochri? Why can't you just say, now that you're talking about it, first of all, why do you have to talk about it? Secondly, now that you're talking about it, just give it to either of them or sell it to either of them. Why do you have two different verbs of what you're going to be doing with the nevela? So says the Gemara, it's machloket tanaim. תתננה ואכלה או מחור לנוכרי, אין לי אלא לגר בנתינה ולעובד כוכבים במכירה. I would read the pasuk and say that you could only give it for free to a ger toshav. You can't sell it to him, can't charge him. You have to give it as a matana, and you give it to oved kochavim. You have to charge. You have to sell it. You can't just give it as a matana. That's what I would have thought, says the Gemara. How do I know that I could give it to a oved kochavim or sell it to a ger toshav also? Says the Gemara, lager b'mechira minayin. How do I know that I could actually charge a ger toshav? Talmud Omar, titenena o machor leoved kochavim. It says titenena o machor. Instead of separating the acts, it puts the verbs together. Why do you put the verbs together? To apply each one of the verbs to each one of the cases. In other words, instead of saying, give it to a ger toshav, right? And you could, to a goy, you could sell. Right? Instead of separating like this, puts the verbs together. Right? It says, lager titenena, instead of saying titenena lager o machor lenochri, it says lager titenena o machor. So you could put the comma, reading the pasuk, reading the sentence like this. To the ger, you could give it or sell it, period. Or you could read it the other way around. You could read, give it or sell it to the nochri, which is what the Gemara is going to say right now. And benetina, that's for selling it to a ger toshav. So says the Gemara, le'oved kochavim benetina minayin. How do you know that you could give it for free to an oved kochavim, to idol worshipping individuals? Says the Gemara, Talmud Omar, titenena ve'achala o machor lenochri. This way, now you're reading also the sentence together, that the verbs are put together, titenena ve'achala o machor lenochri. You could either give it for eating or sell it to the nochri. And that's because the pasuk changes from the regular way of writing a sentence, and instead of having the name and the verb, the name and the verb, it has the name, the verb, and the name. Puts them together in a way that it could be read both. So now, of course, you have to ask the obvious question. If that's the case, why do you have to say it like that? Just say, sell it to anyone you want, or give it to anyone that you want. The Gemara is going to discuss that. Says the Gemara, Nimtzata Omer, it comes out, turns out to be the halacha, echad ger, ve'echad oved kochavim. Doesn't make a difference if it's a ger toshav who doesn't do avodah zarah, or even if it's a oved avodah zarah, makes no difference. Ben benetina, ben bemechira. You could give it as a matana, or you could give it as a sale. Now, the obvious problem with this is you're giving matanat chinam to a goy, right? To oved kochavim. So that seems to be the challenge that the Gemara brings. In other words, remember, we said, lo techonem, lo titen lahem matanat chinam, and the Gemara says, really? Isn't that machloket tanaim? Here seems to be that the Gemara is presenting one shita in the Tanaim, that you could give your nevela for free to an oved avodah zarah. So says the Gemara, that's divrei Rabbi Meir. This is the shita of Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Yehuda, the peer of Rabbi Meir, disagrees with that. Rabbi Yehuda omer dvarim kichtavan. The understanding of the pasuk is exactly like what it says in the Chumash, that you could only give as matana to a ger toshav, and you could only sell to an Oved Avodah Zarah. Leger benetina or Oved Kochavim b'mechira. So says the Gemara, wait a second. Rabbi Meir, Shapir Gama Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir is saying good. Rabbi Meir is saying good. Right? Because the verbs are put together. Hashem has taken it out of the normal context and written it in a way that it should be read both ways. So the argument of the grammatic argument of Rabbi Meir is a beautiful argument. What does Rabbi Yehuda say to that? Rabbi Yehuda says, yes, correct. Rabbi Yehuda amar lecha, isal kadatach k'tekama Rabbi Meir. Says Rabbi Yehuda, I have a massive problem with the grammar, so to speak, of Rabbi Meir. Because if that's correct, that Rabbi Meir holds that you could either sell or give to either Oved Kochavim or a Ger Toshav, then why do you write O? Lichtov Rachmana titenena v'achala o umachor lenochri. You should have said, you should give it to a Ger Toshav and sell it to a Nochri. That would read amazing, because then now the verbs are complementing each other, right? Give it to eat and sell. Now you could read give it to eat and sell with a Ger Toshav. You could read give it to eat and sell to Oved Kochavim. But it's complementary to each other because it's give it to sell and sell. But the pasuk does not say ve. It says o, which means either this or that, which is mutually exclusive. The language of the Torah does not seem to indicate what Rabbi Meir says at all, says Rabbi Yehuda. Because otherwise, the aleph is extra. Just say umachor, and you will be just good. Why does it say o? You see clearly, says Rabbi Yehuda from here, that the Torah is saying either this or that. You either could only give it for free to a Ger Toshav, or second option, it cuts the sentence to two. Or you could only sell it, not for free, but sell it to Oved Kochavim and Oved Avodah Zarah. So says the Gemara, well, that's a good argument. What does Rabbi Meir say to that? Rabbi Meir has to have an answer for that. Says the Gemara, last narrow line, Rabbi Meir ahu l'aktume netina de ger lemechila de Oved Kochavim. Rabbi Meir says correct. I understand what you say, but you know what the reason is? The reason is, if you wouldn't have O, I would think that both of them are equals. You could equally give it to a Ger Toshav, or give it for free to Ger Toshav, or give it for free to Oved Avodah Zarah, right? Or sell it to Avodah Zarah, to Oved Avodah Zarah. Comes the pasuk says, "Lager asher b'sha'aracha titenena v'achala." That's first. Or second option is you sell it to a nochri. To tell you that giving it for free to a Ger Toshav is mukdam, takes precedent to selling it even to a Oved Avodah Zarah. If you have two options, better to give it to a Ger Toshav that doesn't do Avodah Zarah than give to a Oved Avodah Zarah. That's what Rabbi Meir says. Says the Gemara. What does Rabbi Yehuda do with that? Rabbi Yehuda says, really, seriously? You don't need the pasuk for that. Of course you're going to give him first. Right? Rabbi Yehuda, kevan de ger ata metzuve la'achayoto. You have a mitzvah, right? V'chai imach. You have a mitzvah to see to it, to support the non-Jew that lives amongst you, that has accepted not to worship idols. You're mechuyav la'achayoto. So if you have a food sitting there that you could give out, you want to give out, right? At least when it's the damage is very nevela, is worth nothing. Right? Because what would they do with nevela? If you don't give it out, you have to feed it to the dogs or whatnot, whatever the usage was. It's not worth. You can't sell it. Imagine somebody that lives in the ghetto, in the Jewish ghetto, is going to sell it to who? What's the worth of a nevela, right? By the way, you have to understand that because of this, it was very difficult to be a butcher in generations before. Now it's fairly easy because they have a shutaf that's a goy. They use a basis of a already existing shlachthaus, a shchita house, and the slaughterhouse itself uses the meat. They want to shecht and slaughter their own. So the Jewish company goes in and says, well, we will kill all of them, we'll shecht all of them. Whatever we don't want, you'll take, right? Everyone benefits because they're paying them top dollar, right? And it makes no difference for them. But actually, it's better for them because they also sell and use the skin. They use and sell some of the stomach for gidim, for other things, and the rest of it for fertilizing companies. So even the waste that we pay for the animal as a whole, even the waste they make money on. There's nothing that they don't make money on. Nothing. Every little thing the company makes money on. There's no trash in a smart, properly set up slaughterhouse. Everything is used, right? So they make money, and we could be machmir as much as you want, right? Could say, I only do Bet Yosef, Madrin, Min HaMadrin, Min HaMadrin, right? Zaku Baruch. They don't care. Whatever you don't take, they'll take, right? Yeah, there's of course a number that you have to keep, but that's basically it, right? Back in the day, you spent, imagine $5,000-$10,000, you bought an animal. Hashem Yirahem if it would become tarif, right? Everyone would say Avinu Malkenu Vayavor before and davening to Hashem, hoping against hope that this is going to be kasher. And oy v'avoy if it would be tarif. You know what they would do in Europe? In Europe, because nobody would buy from them. Their rent, you flushed $5,000 to the trash, right? They'll go bring their wife and their kids and they'll go to the Rav of the city, everyone crying, right, with the she'elah, with the keres of the animal. So if it's tarif or the pressure that was, that's why you find many of especially the European, especially within the Ashkenazi communities, you find a lot of the kulot that Maran Bet Yosef does not agree with, and the reason of this creative leniency is because he had no other way. He had no other way, right? So that's the thing. So it was not worth so much. Why am I saying this? Is because of what the Tosafot says over here. Tosafot says, wait a second. So whenever we have, we could sell something, we have to give it for free to Ger Tosha. Can't sell it to a goy. Everyone is going to go bankrupt. So no, you have to lose maybe a little bit money to support a Jew or a Ger Toshav, not a whole lot. In Nevela was not worth much, right? Because nobody would buy it. It would be dog food afterwards, right? So therefore, that little bit, you're expected to go out of your way to support a Jew or support a goy that has accepted not to do Avodah Zarah as the means of our circles of monotheist belief and pushing for that in the world, right? So, by the way, the Reb Chaim Ozer Gerdunsky was the unappointed, not officially appointed, Rav of Vilna. Vilna never had a Rav because Vilna was so much filled with tremendous Gedolei Torah and Talmidei Chachamim. Who you gonna appoint? Whoever you would appoint, there would be 100 other people like him that would be offended because there's no one Gadol Ador. The only one that was so much bigger than other people that unofficially automatically became like the address for everyone was Reb Chaim Ozer. Reb Chaim Ozer was once sitting, and this happened. There was a very interesting case of a she'ela in Terefot, and the butcher comes with his wife and kids. Everyone is crying and this to find maybe a heter for this. So it says this in the story. Reb Chaim Ozer was sitting like this, learning or doing whatever it is. His house was a bedin. There was 8 different rooms. Each one of them was a bedin, and he was over all of them. There was a line, like a half a mile line, outside his house. All the she'elot of Europe would come to his house, to the degree that the post office had the regular daily delivery, and then they had a second delivery only for his house. That's how much letters he got. And it was a tremendous gaon. You have to understand, like somebody, a bachur in yeshiva, once wrote him a letter of divrei Torah. He was learning whatever masechta he was learning. He sent him a letter, right, of divrei Torah. 5 years later, or 4 years later, he goes to visit for the first time Reb Chaim Ozer. I had to stand in this long line, a few hours. He gets to him and he introduces himself. As soon as he introduces himself, he says, I'm so and so from this city, from this yeshiva. He says, oh, you wrote to me about this and this and this. Tremendous gaon, you can imagine. So he was sitting there and there was a sefer. He just took the sefer like this, where his hand was holding, and he opens it, right? And it was a she'elah. It's a sefer of she'elot u'tshuvot. It was a she'elah exactly on this case of terefot that this butcher had brought to him. It was a whole response, a halachic piece, how to be matir, how to allow this she'elah. And he looked at it carefully and says, mutar goes. So one of his talmidim says, what a bikiyut, how did you remember? So I didn't know. I didn't know what to answer. This she'elah was very complicated, and I just knew that HaKadosh Baruch Hu was going to give me siyata d'shmaya to answer the question. So I took, okay. But when you carry the weight of Am Yisrael on your shoulders, you sometimes think that you're doing it yourself. But it's really HaKadosh Baruch Hu doing everything. You're just the puppets. But again, you have to understand that this was a very different scenario than what we deal with in our life, in our day and age. Now, so says Rabbi Yehuda, therefore, because you're mechuyav to see to it, to support the ger toshav, you don't need a pasuk for that. Of course, I know that if I have two choices, I'm going to give it first to ger toshav before I give it to idol worshipping individuals. So says the Gemara, davar acher, lo tchonem, lo titen lahem chen. We mentioned the third drasha of the Gemara was lo tchonem, lo titen lahem chen. You cannot praise an Avodah Zarah or Oved Avodah Zarah. So says the Gemara, Mesayeh aleh Rav, the Amar Rav, this helps the Shita of Rav who said, Asur la'adam she'omar, kama na'eh oved et kochavim zu. It's asur to pray, say, wow, what a gorgeous person. Look at how beautiful she is or how handsome he is. Can't say that, right? Metive, in other words, not only you cannot praise the Avodah Zarah, but someone that develops and advances the cause of Avodah Zarah, also you have to stay away from. And when you praise something, you connect yourself with them, right? When you praise something, there's a beautiful piece from the Ben Ish Chai. I want to explain this for a moment because it's important. The Ben Ish Chai writes this in Masechet Sanhedrin in Ben Yehoyada, in Daf Lamed Tet, I believe it is. There the Gemara says about the Nevuah of Ovadia Hanavi, right? Ovadia, how many chapters is Obadiah? One perik. It's only one perik. It's one of the shortest pieces of Tanakh in Terei Asar. And Obadiah was who? What was his job, day job? His day job was not a Navi. He had a day job. What was his day job? He was the prime minister of Achav and Izevel. He was the second in command in the country. Now, the only difference is he was a tzaddik and Achav was a rasha merusha. And Izevel had the gold medal of being a rasha, like 10 times worse than her husband, right? She slaughtered all the Nevi'im. Can you imagine? It's a completely different level of rishut. And he lived with them in the palace, and he still remained a tzaddik until the end of his life. And not just the regular, he saved 100 Nevi'im, and he was feeding them from his own money, and then he ran out of money. He was a very wealthy person. He spent all of his wealth on it, and then he went into debt to support these people, right? So says the Gemara, why was he zocheh to this nevuah? Because his nevuah is a nevuah that every Navi would dream of having this nevuah. As the final downfall of Edom and the coming of Mashiach, tremendous nevuah. So it says the Gemara, why was he zocheh to this? What was the merit that he had? So it says the Gemara, Yavo mi, let Obadiyahu, who lived with two Rashaim and didn't learn from them, come and prophesize on Esav, who was Esav, who was a Rasha who lived with two tzaddikim and didn't learn from them. Right? Midah keneged midah. Who are the two tzaddikim? Of course, his parents. Right? Yitzchak Avinu, Rivka Imenu. Right? So Frek the Ben Ishchai asks the Ben Ishchai Ben Yoyada, two tzaddikim. Last I counted, were three tzaddikim there. Who was the third one? Well, he had a twin brother. Who do you think he played Legos with? They grew up together with Yaakov Avinu. He sees the contrast. Ish tam Yoshev Alim. Right? Tibimut of Yaakov Avinu. Hatmada of Yaakov Avinu. Tzidkut. So why do you say two? It's three. It says the Ben Ishchai something simple but marvelous. Very insightful. He says, it's not a chidush that he didn't learn from him. He said, Esav excelled in what mitzvah? Mitzvah of kivud avayim. Right? Gemara says he was the best in kivud avayim. So the fact that he respected them so much, but he still didn't learn from them, that's a chidush. That's a rishut. But the fact that he didn't learn from Yaakov, he hated the guts of Yaakov Avinu. He was his rival. Right? Of course he... So says the Mishcha, that's why. So I always say, one of the ways not to get affected by the goyim, by the garbage, the hashkafa, teme'ah of the goyim of Umot HaOlam is, if you love something, if you adore something, if you glorify something, you'll be affected by it 100%. Like Rambam says, Derech B'riyato Shel, this is in Perek Vav of Hilchot Deot, Halacha Aleph, דרך בריאתו של האדם להיות נמשך בדעותיו ובדרכיו אחרי חבריו ורעיו ונוהג כאנשי מדינתו, you will be affected by them. But the only way not to be affected is when you clearly separate your value system from them. Part of it, and this is the genius of the Gemara, part of it is you stay away from saying how beautiful this is, how amazing that is. Because once you say that, you just connected yourself with it. Part of the disconnect is beautiful, shemutiful. I don't care. Right? Over the Avodah Zarah, it doesn't exist. Delete it completely. I don't talk about them. I don't look at them. I don't nothing. I disassociate myself physically from them and emotionally from them. And that's the way to keep yourself safe. And this is what the Gemara is saying. Lo tehorem, lo titen lahem hen. You don't even say, Kama na'eh ovedet kochavim zu. You don't even say that. Right? So says the Gemara, Metivim, they asked in the Beit Midrash, they asked the question, Maaseh b'Rashbag, we have a story to none other than Rashbag. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel Nasi Yisrael shaya al gabe ma'ala behar habayit, that he was there on Har Habayit, v'ra'a ovet kochavim achad na'a beyoter. He saw a gorgeous, beautiful Goyish woman, and what did she say? Amar, he praised Hashem. He said, Ma rabu ma'asecha Hashem. Hashem, you have created beautiful creatures in the world. Amazing. Chazaku Baruch. Right? The Af Rabbi Akiva, it was a similar story to Rabbi Akiva as well. Ra'ah Eshet Tornosropus. He saw the wife of Tornosropus. The Midrash says that she came to him to seduce him. Right? That's a different story for itself. So this is really just a side tangent. It's not really related to the kasha of the Gemara necessarily. So says the Yad Malachi and Sdei Chemet. Rak sachaku bacha. Rabbi Akiva spat. He laughed and he cried. The Gemara says, why did he do this? So says the Gemara, Rak, the reason he spat was, שהייתה באה מטיפס רוחה. She comes from a tipas rucha over the Avodah Zarah. Sachak, he laughed because he saw beruach hakodesh de'atida de'migayra v'nasivla, that she's going to become a gioret and is going to actually marry him. right? So Shiva's car actually makes much more sense with the midrash that she came to do avera, and he's laughing, says, "You chakber said it. Like you think you gotta do avera." It's mamash like the story, the rerun, and this is when he gets to Gilgulim and so on. It becomes very interesting because there's a rerun of the Maaseh of David and Bathsheba. Right? David HaMelech was supposed to marry Bathsheba. Uriah Hitti ended up, according to Malbim, dying without the command of David HaMelech. Right? Before Yoav ben Tzruya put the command of David HaMelech into action, he happened to get killed anyways. Right? So it was meant to be, and here he saw in the Ruach HaKodesh that's it's going to become a Gioret. Bacha, and he cried, the Hashufra Bali Ba'afra, that this beauty is going to be rotting in the earth, which is, again, we explained this when we did Masechet Brachot Daf Hey. Right? Remember there Rabbi Yochanan crying because of the beauty of Rabbi Yochanan and so on and so forth. So says the Gemara, the Rav Odiu de Kamodi. So Rav says no. He was just thanking HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Thanking HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He says, no, what beautiful creatures you have in your world, right? But the Amar Mor, as the Tara taught, Haro'e Beriot Tovot. We had this in Masechet Brachot, of course, right? That when you see Beriot Tovot, you say, Baruch Shkacha Ba'olamo, or Shkacha Bara Ba'olamo. And the Gemara then asks a follow-up question. It says, Istakuli Mishari? Well, who says it's mutar to gaze at a woman? It's asur to look at a woman, right? Metive. We learned, Venishmarta mikol davara, when the pasuk says in Devarim, Chav Gimal, that you should be careful, mikol davara, from any negativity. The drasha of the pasuk is should not gaze at a woman, a beautiful woman, even if she's not married. And if she's married, even if she's ugly, she won the Genesis book of records of ugly people, right? Still will be asur. You can't even look at bigadim svuim, like beautiful clothing that you know who the owner is, because then the mind of a person could be drawn after imagining the person wearing that, and that's hirhur, which is asur. Velo behamor, velo behamora, and velo behazir, velo behazira, velo beofot bisman shenizgakin zen. And not even looking at animals when they are in amidst cohabitation. Ve'afilu malei einayim kimalach hamavet. Can't look. Now we're going to explain this Gemara. We're out of time. We're going to explain this Gemara later because it's actually a Gemara, a Tosafot over here, which is extremely halachically potent and very important to learn. So the Gemara says basically it's asur to look. How did they do? And the Gemara answers. We're going to come back to the details of this. Just finishing the answer of the Gemara. Says the Gemara, Keren Zavit Havai. It's not that he looked at, but it was like, imagine a building on the corner and sidewalks on each side. So one person is coming this way, one person is coming this way, and they bump into each other for that 1 second that the Rav Shimon Gamliel saw her and says, okay, Baruch Shekacha Lo Be'olamo. He said they praised HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but it's not in a way that he chose to look at this Ovedet Kochavim. So that's the final answer of the Gemara, but we have to go back now and explain this drasha of Lo Ya'arher Bayom and the V'nishmarta Mikol Davara, which Be'ezrat Hashem will continue in the days to come. Hazaku Baruch.